Great. Thank you all so much for joining. My name's Heather K. Margolis with Channel Maven and Spark Your Channel. And I'm so excited today to be moderating a good friend of mine and someone who knows so much about the channel and is happy to share today. So Balaji Subramanian, SVP of Global Channel Chief. Excuse me, I'm going to say that again. SVP Global Channel Chief at iGel. Balaji is extremely grateful for gaining 20 plus years experience in the high-tech industry, working at companies such as Cisco, Adobe, Informatica, ServiceMax, and currently iGel Technology, where he is SVP Global Channel Chief. Nailed it that time. Bringing a strong breadth of experience in running businesses, Balaji's roles have included finance, sales ops, strategy planning, and direct sales. So I'm going to have Balaji take it away. If you have any questions, please ask over on the chat or in the question section, and we will get to those. Balaji, the floor is all yours.
All right. Thank you, Heather. I very much appreciate that introduction. And also, thank you to Rod and Bachus and Caleb also and Channel Focus for inviting me to present at this particular session and organizing this great event that we've had all along these last 3 days. And thank you, all of you guys who are attending this also. I know it's day 3, it's a Friday afternoon, and you've gone through many, many sessions already so far. So thanks for joining this particular session too. I know I've learned a long time ago that the average person has probably a average attention span of about 20 minutes. And so I always try to focus my presentations around that 20 minutes or so, right? I might go over a little bit today, but around that time. Please make this interactive. Heather, I think, is always going to be looking at sort of the chat and the questions that come through. So Heather, please stop me at any point in time where you feel that might be a pertinent question, and I will try to answer that also. And so the other thing before I actually start also is, and by the way, the session, as you guys know, is how do you effectively measure the ROI of any particular channel partner program, right? And as you guys gone through many sessions and webinars and things like that, it's always good things that you learn. But how do you also make it actionable? And I felt for this particular presentation, this perfect timing. It's the middle of November. Our fiscal year is ending. We're going through a planning process as we speak. I have already gone through one review with my executive leadership team about a month ago. I'm meeting with my CFO, my chief revenue officer, and our sales ops person on Monday to actually review a few more things. So I said, why don't I just make this very real? I'm going to be very transparent, and I'm going to share with you sort of the process that we've gone through in putting together a partner program, what it means, why it should be measured, and then the ROI around it, and how I'm going to measure the ROI and things like that. So hopefully you guys will learn some of those things of how I do it. I'm going to share real numbers, real partners, real stuff. I just felt that it might be better just to show that, right? So it's much more useful for you guys. All right? So let me go ahead and get started. And I only have about 8 slides, 7 to 8 slides, I think. So we should be able to go through this fairly quickly, but also at the same time, I'll make sure that I don't rush through it also. Okay? So the agenda. It's important if you are going to measure the ROI and see how effective anything is, you need to build a plan. So I'll take you guys through how we actually have built our channel program plan and how we've sort of built it up in different stages. And then the second thing, this is very important, is to develop some type of measurement system. And I'm going to actually show you a P&L that we've built, right? As Heather pointed out, in my earlier background when I came out of school and all that, was actually in finance. So I'm actually a little bit more comfortable with P&Ls and numbers and all that. But as a channel chief, let me tell you, this is super important. So I can sit across the table from a chief financial officer or my CMO or my CRO or anyone or CEO, right, and be able to talk about a P&L and the impact that it has and the measurements that you have in place and the ROI becomes very, very meaningful. And you get a lot of support because of that. So I'll take you guys through that. And then the KPIs and how you measure them and how I'm measuring them, how the team is measuring them, and then sort of bring it all together at the end. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, in building a plan, one of the first important things to do, of course, is to make sure that the plan is aligned to any of your key strategic objectives, right? And so for us at my company, at iGel, right, I'll just share with you kind of what we're looking at, right? We are still not a 100% subscription company. And so this is a very important strategic objective for us. So when I'm putting together a plan, when I'm talking to our partners, this is a very important conversation that we have. Over the next 12 months, we're going to go from a licensing type of company to a subscription company. So what type of program should I have in place today? And then how should I evolve it as we go forward, right? So that's an important strategic objective for us. Second thing is, well, we have a huge, we feel, addressable market in front of us. And getting new logos and acquiring new customers always is very important for most companies. For us, it's even more so because we have so much white space out there, and we feel that should be a very important part of the program and a very important part of the behavior that we expect from our partners also. So another key strategic objective for us. Third is vertical focus and vertical industries that we really care about. For us, actually, most, I would say majority of our pipeline is probably sitting in the healthcare industry and the financial services industry. And retail is coming up, call centers are coming up, those kinds of things also. So it's prudent for us to make sure that as we talk about our go-to-market strategy, as we talk with our partners, as we put together a partner program, as we talk about acquiring new customers, industry plays a big role also. Should we have specializations, right? How should we make sure we recruit partners who are specialized maybe in these industries? Do we incent them? Do we reward them? Do we create a enablement program around it? So all of those things start to become part of our program conversations also. Okay. Another thing, of course, going hand in hand with the industry is this customer segments, right? So we have an enterprise team that is focused on enterprise type of customers, and we have sort of thresholds that we define. But we also have a lot of SMB customers, right? Especially in Europe, right? I think around 30% of my run rate business in Europe just comes from these small SMB kind of customers. We don't really know who they are a lot of times. They just place orders with partners who place orders with distributors, and they come in, right? And we see them coming in, right? And so you got to think about that also. And I'm thinking about that is how do I want to make sure that I have the right partners focusing on SMB partners, right partners focusing on enterprise customers also. Another strategic objective for us. And then, of course, services, right? I want partners who are very focused on business outcomes. We want partners who are very focused on making that customer successful. So it's very important to make sure that we have recruit partners and make sure we enable our existing partners to really focus on delivering those business outcomes and those services that's going to drive those business outcomes. Because, as I mentioned earlier, going to a subscription model, right? It's all about recurring revenue. And the only way you're going to get recurring revenue is if you have high renewals. The only way you're going to get high renewals is if you have good customer adoption. So services and customer adoption, which I think is my next bullet here, customer satisfaction and customer adoption, go hand in hand also. And so these are sort of 6 objectives. There are probably other objectives also that I can probably throw up here, but these are 6 ones just to give you an idea of how we think about the next year, the next 2 years, and how I'm putting together a program that starts to address many of these things that you have in here. So building a plan that is aligned to your strategic objectives is obviously very important because that's the only way you're going to measure it and be able to understand the return on any program that you put in place. All right? All right. So I'm going to keep going. The next thing I did was all of you guys are very familiar with the Magic Quadrant and things like that, right? That Forrester puts out or Gartner puts out and things like that. And so sort of using that same concept, we said, how do we take our partners? How do we understand the types of partners that we have today? And how do we map them to these journeys that we feel that they could take, right? And so I'm going to walk you through this slide here. It's a build, so bear with me here. So again, you got your 4 quadrants. And so I'm going to do the first build. And if you can read it on the left-hand side, I put 3 sort of labels there: fulfillment, influence, and source. So as we think about our partners, right, we think about what type of partners are they? Do they fulfill for us? Do they influence deals for us? Or better yet, do they source pipeline for us? So I kind of put it there on that y-axis, the vertical axis there. The next thing I did was down at the bottom here, if you can see that, I put down resell, co-sell, sell, and sell and services, or sales and services, right? So those are sort of the sales motions that we sort of work with these types of partners, right? So I'm starting to graph them in terms of where do they fit, right? And so then what I did was working with the team. We said, okay, what is the journey in terms of enablement that we would expect our partners to go through and should go through? And so we kind of mapped that up here on this quadrant also. We said, well, they certainly need to be able to sell. Do they need to do a demo? Should they be able to do a proof of concept or a proof of value? Should they be able to provide services? And should they be able to provide support? So we kind of put it in those major buckets. And we said, as you kind of go from the bottom left-hand quadrant all the way to the top right-hand quadrant, this is probably the journey of enablement that we need to be able to invest in and make sure that our partners then adhere to also. Okay, so we did that. And these are some partners that you might recognize. And like I said, in the fully transparent here, in the spirit of sharing with you guys, we mapped our partners, right? And we said, where are they today, right? Some of them are in sort of the bottom lower left-hand quadrant. Some are sort of centered, right, grouped around the middle, and some are sort of over in the top right, right? And we said, okay, if these are our top strategic partners, right, and we asked them, and by the way, we're doing that. We're going through business planning with all of these partners as we speak right now. We're asking them, this is where we put you. Do you agree with this? Do you agree with this journey? And by the way, it doesn't there's no right answer as to which quadrant you should be in. It's just which ones do you feel comfortable to be in. And if you feel comfortable being in the top right-hand quadrant, well, we know what type of journey you need to make and the enablement and investment that we need to make with you. If you're in the bottom left-hand quadrant, we know where you are and we know the investment and things that we need to do with you also. So it's not bad wherever you are, but we just want to make sure that we're aligned with you from a business planning standpoint, strategic standpoint, and vertical standpoint, customer standpoint, enablement standpoint. All of those things come into play here, right? So that's the first thing that we kind of did. It really helps us map the journey and map our customers, and we work with our sales teams and we ask them the same questions. We work with our marketing teams, ask them the same questions, and make sure that we're all aligned from that standpoint. The next thing we did was we took the same quadrant, same thing, I haven't changed anything here, and we said, how do we then start to align KPIs and investment strategy and return on investment to kind of these quadrants, right? So we said, okay, let's look at this. So the bottom left-hand quadrant, if partners are in there, I'm going to use my distributors a lot more to help manage them. I feel there's going to be a lot more transactions from those types of customers who resell and fulfill for us, right? And it's very important to make sure that there's a sales enablement plan put in place in there. It's important that maybe we have spiffs that are important there. Maybe we use our VADs to drive campaigns and use MDF with them around those types of partners and the customers that they serve, right? The second thing we did was, okay, what about in the middle? Well, for these kinds of partners who are sort of straddling that influence and sourced and co-sell and sell, those types of partners, we want to make sure that we have an account manager, a channel account manager that is assigned to them, that is managing them, right? Fewer transactions probably from these partners compared to the ones on the bottom left. But these guys, not only should they be from a sales enablement standpoint, but we should make sure that there's a technical enablement journey that they go on also. They need to be able to demo. They need to probably do a proof of value also, right? And rebates come into play here. So rebates are probably important for these guys, and MDF are very important for these guys too, right? So again, from an investment standpoint, that's what we want to do for those types of partners. And then on the top right quadrant, probably the fewest transactions, but probably large deals, much larger deals from these types of partners. The top right, sales enablement, technical enablement, and services enablement, right? How do we make sure that we have a services enablement path and learning path for these partners to make sure that we're comfortable that they are now enabled to be able to deliver services to customers and keep them happy, because we want that high customer adoption, high customer satisfaction, high recurring revenue. So very important here. Now, spiffs and rebates may be less important for these partners, but what's more important to them is bringing them into services deals. shadowing, making sure that they can shadow our professional services team, and vice versa, reverse shadowing. Make sure that my professional services team is be able to go on their projects and be able to mentor them and things like that, right? So we did this type of mapping also. We first mapped the partners, their journey, and then we did sort of this investment approach from that standpoint. So if you kind of summarize this, the ones in the top two quadrants up on top were probably partners that we're going to sort of speak double down on, right? And then the bottom partners, again, nothing bad with them, but those are the ones that we're going to maintain or grow also as they kind of go through the journey. So this is sort of what then influence and shape and is shaping our partner programs as we go into next year also is how do we want to invest from an enablement standpoint? How do we want to invest from a financial standpoint? How do we want to invest from a coverage standpoint, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So that's sort of, again, how we've started to build a plan and start put together. So I'm going to keep going. Stop me anytime you guys have any questions. All right, so now switching gears to say, okay, how do you make your CFO an ally, right? Which is very important for all of channel chiefs, is to really make sure that your CFO is an advocate and an ally for you, right? But before I talk about the CFO, let's make sure that we make sure our partners are allies as well. So we built actually a little calculator for our partners. So every one of my channel account managers who are going out and building those business plans with those partners, we have a little calculator for them that they sit down. And as you can see here, it has linearity assumptions of how much revenue you're going to bring in Q1 versus Q4, how much revenue you're going to bring in. What's your software mix? So this is one of the KPIs that we care about, right? Is we want to become much more of a software company. How much are you going to source, right? Are you going to build this pipeline? How many sales cycles are you going to lead, right? What percentage of revenue are you going to lead? And then the implied front-end margin, the deal reg margin, the rebates that we're going to provide in the back end from a source standpoint, lead standpoint, MBO standpoint, right? And then it kind of gives you sort of this retained margin for the partner to look at to say, oh, I'm going to get about 24% or 22%, et cetera, on the business that I'm going to have with you, right? So we make sure that we are aligned with the partner as we build the program also. And the KPIs that we're going to measure as a return on investment, they align too also. And they know what source it is. They know what partner led is. They know what influence is, et cetera, and how much they're going to get paid on it also. Okay, so we do that in parallel. All right. As I am building the plan for the CFO to review and all that, here's two things that I'm going to share with you guys, right? So one of the things is from a partner-facing standpoint, I said, well, where's my sales mix going to come from? Is it going to come from my large account resellers? Is it going to come from my elite partners? Is it going to come from my expert partners or my entry partners, right? We have a two-tier distribution model, so everything goes through our VADs from that standpoint. What percentage of rebates am I going to give? 6%, 2%, 5%, right? What percentage of revenue am I going to sort of make sure that I have? We have a proposal-based system, so we don't accrue, but I want to make sure that I have a budget that is able to support sort of this MDF program that we're going to have with our LARs and our VADs and our resellers, et cetera, right? So we kind of put that model together in terms of the mix and of both sales and incentives from that standpoint. The other thing is don't forget the internal costs, right? So we have roughly 18 people, 24 people, I think, in on my team, right? What's the burden cost? And the other thing that's important that you see down at the bottom is don't forget the sales commissions, right? So we have salespeople, we have a field organization, all of them get paid on every order that comes in, right? Also. So, and that's a big cost. And so when I'm building a P&L, I want to make sure that that big cost is also included in the P&L. So when I talk to the CFO, that's included, and it becomes much more of a meaningful, deliberate conversation rather than forgetting a big piece of the costs that go in it also. So to give you an idea, this is sort of the mix assumptions and rebate assumptions, and financial assumptions, internal cost assumptions, et cetera, that we put in, and to build a P&L, right? And here it is, right? So you got Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, right? Here we go, right? You got the rebates, you got the MDF, you got the field comp, which don't forget that, right? You got the channel headcount expenses and sort of this gross profit that I can talk to to my CFO and CEO and the whole company about, right? And I could talk to them and say, hey, about 5% of every sales dollar goes to rebates, right? About 4 cents for every dollar goes to support my team, and a big chunk, 18 cents for every dollar, goes towards making sure that every one of my field people get paid also, right? And they get commission. So there's no conflict, right? They get paid on every channel dollar that comes in also. So I can sit down with this, and I'm just showing you a summary, but double click on any one of these kinds of things and be able to then say, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to measure it. This is how we're going to pay on it. And this is how we're going to then understand the return on investment that we're going to get from these investments and make any mid-course corrections that we need to make as we go through next year also. Okay? So building a P&L and having that conversation with your CFO and people that you key stakeholders for you is super important from that standpoint too. Okay, now how do you measure all of this? So I'm going to kind of go through this with you around KPIs that I talked about earlier and how we measure it here at iGel also. I'll do a little plug. You'll see some of these things that we're working with a company called Channel Mechanics, so Kenneth Fox and his team there, in building our deal registration system, building our rebate system, our MDF system, our partner leveling system. So we have a few modules that we built with him in our partner portal. And I'm going to show you some examples of how actually we measure all those kind of things and why it's important to us also, right? So the first thing, here's, I did this a couple of weeks ago. So this is our deal reg map, right? And if you can kind of read it, you can kind of, and I'll read it out for you if you can, is on the sort of the top right-hand bar graph there, it's all about partner sourced opportunities that have been registered, right? And then you have a partner influenced bar graph also. So we track what is co-sell, what is fulfilled, what is influence, what is led, what is partner source, and what's influence, right? I might have said that already. And what's qualified, what's disqualified, what's open. We can look at it by geography, by country, actually, also, right? And be able to track this. So this is how we're actually going to pay a lot of our partners. This is how we're going to pay actually my team, right? We're going to get paid not only on revenue, but on source business also. So this is, again, one way of measuring one of our strategic objectives on co-selling, influencing, sourcing deals, et cetera, et cetera. All right. The other thing, here's another thing that I'm putting up here on the slide is, and this is our MDF, right? So as you can see here, we have a budget, we have funds approved, we have budget remaining, claims pending, claims approved, etc. So we have the ability, again, for that budget that we're going to put into our MDF program, we're able to actually measure it, which partner, we actually have ROIs within each project also that we can look at, right? Which geo, which type of sales cycle, was it a sourced, was it fulfilled, was it a led, right? Those kinds of things. So again, the ability to measure is very important from that standpoint. Another module I'm showing up here, this is our rebates model, right? Same thing. What's our qualifying revenue? What's claimable? What's unclaimed? What's approved? What's pending? You get the idea, right? Be able to, again, measure how we're paying our rebates, right? For what time period, for which partners, and what are we paying them for, etc. So again, another example for you from that standpoint. Here I'm just showing you a snapshot of our CRM system, right? Here's sort of the customers, the new logos that we've closed, right? Which logos from which geographies. I know you can't see it that well, so I'm just reading it off to you. Which partners, why, what's the source, right? Those kinds of things also that are very important to measure for us. And then our pipeline, right? How much pipeline has been created so far year to date? We have, whatever, $300 million of pipeline being created, right? From which partner, from which distributor, from which region, from which types of products, et cetera, et cetera. So the key takeaways from here, this slide, I know it's a little messy slides in terms of having a build here, but the key takeaway that I would give counsel and guidance on is, if you can't measure it, you're not going to be able to manage it. And if you can't manage it, you're certainly not going to be able to talk about the ROI. And your conversations with your board, with your executive levels, with your stakeholders, start to get diminished and weakened. And therefore, your role as channel chief becomes less and less important from that standpoint. So measuring and managing to your business plan and building that P&L is so, so important, right? It makes conversations so much easier, and you get so much more support from people that you care about and you need support from that standpoint. So measuring is super important. So invest in some type of measurement system. We still do a lot of stuff on spreadsheets. I'm not saying it's all automated, but make sure that you pick a vendor like Channel Mechanics and ask them to help you out also. All right. So my last slide, I think, and I'll kind of bring it all together here and summarize everything once again, also from what I've kind of gone through so far. First thing, right? The business plan. So make sure, again, you align with your company's strategic objectives, right? Talking about it a year from now and saying, what is my return on my investments or my partner programs when they're not aligned to strategic objectives, again, defeats the conversation and makes it a shorter conversation. So make sure you align with your company's strategic objectives in putting together that business plan. Create that heat map of your partner's journey, right? It really helped us quite a bit, sort of just think through. We have all of these partners. Where do they sit? What type of partner are they? What type of journey should they go on? What type of investment should we have? How can we make our partner program so much stronger for them and meaningful for them? The only way you can do that, I think, is to sort of put that heat map, right, that 4-quadrant, and put that partner journey together from that standpoint. And then that helps you decide who to double down on, right? So I know now I can go around in my head thinking about sort of these 10 partners in North America and about 15 partners in Europe that we're going to double on next year, right? It's always in my head. I know who they are, right? And then build that business plan with your partners then to drive to those objectives. Make sure that we're aligned. Those guys are aligned with you, right? I'll give you a great example. We had a business planning session with one of our key partners here in North America last week. Phil Eden, who's my channel leader here in North America, put that together. And we were talking to this partner, and we were talking about, sort of their average deal size and their number of transactions and who they're focusing on, their pipeline and things like that. And we got around talking to them about the customer segment that they really wanted to focus on, which is the SMB marketplace, right? And we said, well, how do we invest in you? Here's a business plan. Here's some rebates. But then we kind of said, oh, maybe we take a lot of these rebates that you kind of would have earned and pull it together and invest in maybe 1 or 2 headcount that you might need to drive a very focused SMB type of go-to-market with us, right? And let's have an MSP type of model with you. Maybe we can do a pilot with you, right? So building that business plan, making it sort of a bespoke program for you. You might have heard one of my colleagues, Sandra Glazer-Cheek, talk about this. A bespoke type of program to do that is so very important, okay? All right, investments. Talk to partners to understand what will be meaningful, like I just talked about, right? Investments for them, right? Make it meaningful for them, deliberate, purposeful for them. And it doesn't always have to be financial. Non-financial methods are super important. One of the things I've set aside in my budget is a couple of $100,000 next year for training and enablement vouchers, right? And consulting hours from professional services that I can use with partners, right? So you can kind of call that financial, but it's really not financial. It's non-financial, helping them get trained, enabled, getting that mentoring, getting that shadowing that they need. For us, it's not a rebate. It's not something like that goes to the bottom line, but it really helps them quite a bit become a much more loyal advocate for you also, by the way. So pay attention to non-financial kinds of things also. And then balance the economics between front end and back end. When I joined iGel, we were very much more front end loaded. I'm rebalancing all of that, making sure that there's a nice balance between front end and back end. And it makes sure that you have a much better balanced P&L, by the way, because of that also. And it helps you just sort of navigate a lot of kinds of things. And of course, working with your finance team to set a budget and make sure you guys are aligned from that standpoint also. Measurement. Build a dashboard, right, of leading indicators, lagging indicators. I talked and showed you guys a little bit about that. Track and report these, on a regular cadence. Make sure it's top of mind as a conversation within the hallways of your company, right? Within the hallways of your team. Put in escalation triggers also if any of the KPIs go off track. So don't be afraid to make mid-course corrections and change things, right? Keep it simple, but it's okay to change things and do something different if things aren't really working that well as you go forward. Obviously, partners hate too much change. Anyone hates too much change, but if it's deliberate and purposeful, I think it's okay, right? And of course, building that P&L, it has helped me so many times, right? My last three companies to build a P&L, I have a much stronger conversation with my CFO, my CEO, and everybody else. And I get a lot more support and advocacy for them also. They become part of the business plan with us. They become part of the partner program. That's what you want to be able to do, right? Report, analyze it, use it, of course, to review the ROI that you're getting, right? So I'll share with you one of the metrics that we're going to look at is about 35-40% of our business should be sourced from partners, right? So that's a key thing that everybody in the company is thinking about as we go into next year, right? That's a KPI. And we're going to look at that saying the investments that we're making, are we getting that return to be able to drive about a 35-40% source KPI from our partners, right? We're going to look at services revenue with them and saying the investment that we're making in terms of being able to shadow and mentor and these vouchers that I'm going to give you and all these webinars we're going to do and those kinds of things, are they driving higher customer satisfaction? Are they driving services revenue for you, partner, right? As well as for us, ROI around that, right? So you don't have to do a lot. It's probably 3-4 things at most that really kind of bring the story together based upon, again, your objectives, your P&L, and how you want to invest and things like that, right? And like I said, understand the variances, make any mid-course corrections to the program as needed, and don't be afraid to do that, right? So there you go. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys. I think I stayed within sort of the time that I kind of wanted to stay in, around 20-25 minutes to be able to do this, but take you through sort of real life examples of kind of what we're going through as we speak, and make it very transparent to you, right? With real numbers and real partners and things like that. So I will stop now and turn it over to Heather if you have any questions.
Balaji, that was great. Yeah. There are lots of questions. I'm going to try to group them together a little bit. So there's a couple of questions around partners' influence on deals. How do you measure that? Is it solely on deal reg? And is the partner required to register all opportunities?
Great question. Yes. So we are asking partners to register all opportunities. And the way we built our deal reg system was, again, sort of aligning to how we want to measure it. So I'll just kind of spend 60 seconds on this, but if you can imagine a partner coming in, one of the first things that they see, a question being asked, is it sourced? And if they answer yes, it takes them down a certain menu. If they say I actually am going to lead the sales cycle, we actually pop up a little calendar onto the menu there and saying, okay, if you're going to lead this, put in the date where you're going to have your proof of concept or proof of value, right? So we're actually making sure that there's rigor behind the questions that we ask so we can truly measure it properly. So yes, make sure you put those kinds of things in place. So make sure you register deals and then put in those kinds of questions too so you can track it properly and measure it properly.
And it also, I think, makes them, when someone's asked that question, it makes them think about it and then put more thought into the rest of the process. So you're actually helping them by making them they're not just registering anything.
Exactly.
How do you prevent the complexities of measuring from becoming overwhelming and then taking its own tax on the business?
Yeah, that's something that you should always keep an eye on. And I've learned it the hard way, right? When I was younger, I was probably more ambitious of trying to create a dashboard with many things to measure. And I found that the more you measure, ironically, and the more things that you measure, the more complex it becomes, and it starts to distract you, right? And you don't know the full story. As you guys know, it's always important to sort of tell that story. And so just pace yourself properly, right? So for us, really, is it source business? Is it not? Is it influence business? Is it not? Are you driving services or not? Are you driving customer satisfaction or not? Those are probably four key things that I care about. And if those four things can tell me a good story, I know the program's working and we're investing properly. So don't make it too complex. I know I get carried away sometimes because of my finance background. I'm P&L and L and all these spreadsheets that I don't mind doing, but just keep it simple and maybe 3 to 4 things. That's all you should measure.
That's great. How do you control deal reg and make sure that the conversion ratios are high? What's that next step? It doesn't end at deal reg, right?
Yeah. That's a great question actually. Um, so I'll answer that sort of two-part question. Um, the first part is that working with our partner marketing teams, my colleagues Carl Gersh and Kim Nicola, right, and our CMO, we actually have put into our CRM system 5 categories of campaigns that partners should pick from. So when they come into our deal reg system and they say, we didn't source this, we then offer them these 5 categories that say, okay, where did you get this lead from, right? This campaign, this campaign. We have 5 categories of this. Those categories are put into our CRM system. So now think about it. Partner comes in, registers a deal. It's either source or non-source for them. We can now track that as a lead to our CRM system. We can actually align it to these campaigns, and then we can look at the conversion rate and the close rate as we go forward. So now we have a sort of almost, it's not perfect, but almost a closed loop cycle in terms of being able to understand what the partner registers and what is closed in the end, and if it's source or not source, and if our campaigns that they're picking from are working also. So we can actually look at the efficiency of those campaigns and look at, well, did MDF, for example, one of the questions on that, one of the campaigns is we use MDF for this particular campaign, right? We had incentives to use this type of campaign, etc. So we can actually then start to track the ROI around those campaigns as well as the conversion rates from beginning to end also. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. There are so many, and there are some in questions and there are some in chat. So let's see what's in questions. How do you train your channel account managers to take this approach with partners? Did I just ask you that, or was I thinking of asking you that?
No, I think, yeah, so how do we train our channel account managers? First of all, I'm grateful that we have a great team, Europe and US, great channel account managers, really well versed, really smart. So that's been wonderful. And it's just, as in anything else, right? A little bit of change management, right? A little bit of sort of setting the vision, setting the story, where are we headed, where we are today, where are we going, right? And providing training also. So some of the heavy lifting um, that I've done around the calculator, for example, that I think I showed you guys, right? The models and ROI models, the P&L, I built just because I'm comfortable with it, I understand it, it comes a little bit more naturally to me. But then we have little, sessions with our camps, obviously, and say, okay, guys, this is how to use it. Please use it. Come back with any questions, things like that, etc. And like I said, very thankful that everybody has taken it on and is moving forward with their partners, which I love.
Great. I think we have time for one more, and then anyone who's asked a question that has not gotten answered, we will download all the questions and Balaji will answer, and then we'll email them to you as part of a package. Last one, do you comp your reps off of revenue? Do you have thoughts on paying based off of total contribution margin?
Ah, that's a great question. So I'll answer that again in 2 parts. Funny enough, you mentioned margin. Uh, iGel as a company, so far, even this year, we all get paid on gross margin, actually gross profit, as we call it, GP. So when we forecast deals, when we have forecast calls, when we report QBRs and all that, all those numbers are actually gross profit numbers. They're not even revenue numbers. Now, having said that, by the way, completely confused me when I walked into this company a few months ago because I had to kind of shift my head a little bit from that standpoint. But anyway, going forward to January, we are actually going to be able to go back to what I'll call it the revenues type of model, right? And so the comp plans that myself and the team are going to have are on two things. One is two measures. One is definitely on revenue, but the other measure is actually on source revenue, because that's very important in my mind. The value of partners who can bring pipeline in reflects your alignment with them, your business planning with them, your enablement with them, and their success going out and becoming what I call in that virtuous cycle of being so skilled and competent that they're actually driving sales cycles and bringing your deals, right? So source business is something else that we're going to be measured on, but not contribution margin for my channel account managers. Myself, I could have some of that elements in my comp plan, yes, but not my channel account managers.
That's great. And everyone, thank you so much for those questions. Balaji, can't thank you enough. This has been wonderful. And go into the networking lunch.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.